Cannabis Nurse Wendy. I'm a cannabis nurse educator, and I'm going to bring you some resources for medical cannabis education today. For the past 8 years, I've been a medical cannabis patient advocate and a cannabis nurse educator, and also conscientious objector in the failed racist war on drugs. And the same 8 years, I've been providing free medical cannabis education in Hawaii to anybody who will sit still for an hour. And during that time, I did not make any money doing that. I did not endorse any cannabis products, businesses, or healthcare providers. But starting now, I need to disclose that I do have affiliations with 3 people. That is the Answer Page, Holistic Caring, which also includes a clinic called Lumar Clinic, and also Society of Cannabis Clinicians. So I will profit from sales of cannabis education programs today from those 3. So, but I still do not give any medical, legal, or dietary advice, and I encourage anyone who's considering using medical cannabis to first consult with their medical health care team first to find out, just get some individualized advice about what's appropriate for them. So I'd like to give you just a little history about why we have a medical cannabis program in Hawaii at all. And it was back in the 1970s.
Recorded? I mean,
yes.
Will this be available? Great.
In the 1970s, the patients, doctors, and nurses started paving the way for the states to have medical cannabis programs. So in 1978, the first legal medical marijuana program in the United States was created, and it was and still is a federal program. The first patient was Robert Randall. He was arrested for growing, and his doctor fought for him and argued for the compassionate use for Robert's treatment-resistant glaucoma. And it was the only medicine that worked for him. So the Investigational New Drug Program was created in 1978 to address this. And so now the government sponsors the grow site and also the mailing of 300 rolled marijuana cigarettes to each of these patients. But there were a total of 15 patients in the program at one time. But they are responsible for providing the cannabis, the whole plant medicine cannabis, to these patients. So Robert and his wife, Alice O'Leary, who's a nurse, became activists, and they started helping others gain access to whole plant medicines. So that's the reason why Hawaii has a compassionate use program. And we've had one since the year 2000. And you can see from the Department of Health statistics that these numbers are from back in November of last year, but we have over 33,000 patients in our program. And down below, the totals of the number of doctors and nurses who certify those patients is pretty low. It's 208 in the last year had done some certifications. So I met Alice O'Leary at the very first medical cannabis education conference that I attended back in 2014. And that was put on by a group called Patients Out of Time, patients who had just decided they couldn't wait any longer, they needed access to this medicine. And Alice O'Leary was one of the speakers, and I had lunch with her, got to hear more of her story. And I also met a nurse who helped found Patients Out of Time, and also the American Cannabis Nurses Association. And so I became a member of the American Cannabis Nurses Association at that time. And I pledged at that time to promote education, excellence in cannabis nursing through advocacy, collaboration, through education, research, and policy development. And so far, I've mostly just been able to address that through advocacy, education, and policy development. So then I started teaching anyone who would sit still to listen for an hour or so. And so to date, I've been able to educate over 400 healthcare professionals in Hawaii on 4 islands. and hundreds of Cannabis Expo attendees like you. So thank you again for everybody coming out in this weather. So I'd like to set the intentions for today and tell you what I'm going to be talking about. First, I'd like to teach you a little bit about a system in your body that was discovered in 1992. And this is the master controlling system of your body, as it turns out, and it produces neurotransmitters. And two of these neurotransmitters are very important. One of them mimics THC, one of them mimics CBD. So next, I'd like to explain why learning about this is important not only for healthcare professionals, but for patients. And then third, to just guide you to some of the best resources that I've found, and especially for healthcare providers. I'd like to guide them to some continuing education hours so that they can use them to renew their licenses. Patients, doctors, and nurses have been leading the way on this charge for decades, and I'm hoping that you will take some of this information to your healthcare providers and ask them, ask your doctor, ask your nurse, ask your pharmacist, ask everyone if medical cannabis education is right for them. So there's no quiz at the end, but you might win a prize if you're the first to answer a question. So if you're the first to answer, I'm going to give you a coupon. This one is good for a book called Cannabis Pharmacy. And then you'll bring the coupon to my booth to collect your prize. Ready? Let's practice. So for the prize, name the system that makes the neurotransmitters that are like THC and CBD.
Master system.
The what? Master system? Nope. What is it? Endocannabinoid system. She wins a prize. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yes. The answer is always going to be the endocannabinoid system. So what is that? So that is a system, just like your body produces endogenous opiates, your body produces endogenous cannabinoids. So they're called endocannabinoids. And we used to think that the endogenous opiates were responsible for the runner's high, but now we think it's the endocannabinoid system. So there are two main endocannabinoids, and these are made from omega-6 fatty acids, and there are others that are made from omega-3s. But get to know these. The first one is called anandamide, or AEA for short. And this is the one that mimics THC. It's the bliss molecule. Anandamide is Sanskrit for bliss, or supreme joy, and it's referring to yogic ecstasy and euphoria. It's responsible for pain relief, inducing sleep, and the levels of it are higher at night. The other one I'm just going to call 2-AG, because I can only say 2-arachidonoglycerol so many times before I lose my breath. And this is the one that mimics CBD. It's the most abundant one, and the levels of it are higher during the day. So we think it's related to your alertness levels. So either or both of these can be overproduced or underproduced. You may have a deficiency in some diseased states. So we're seeing that it's deficient in autism, in epilepsy, in inflammatory bowel syndrome, Parkinson's disease, and PTSD, and some cancers. And then we see an overproduction in endometrial cancers, obesity, and schizophrenia. So we've got the chemicals now, the endocannabinoids, so we need receptors for them. There are two main types of receptors, CD1 and CD2. And these are found in nearly every cell in your body. CD1 receptors are found mostly in your nervous system, in the central nervous system more so than in the peripheral nervous system, and also in your digestive system. The CD2s are primarily in your immune system, and they can inhibit or stimulate immune function. Now, there's a third possible type that's probably pretty important, and it's called GPR55. And activation of this can promote cancer cell growth and spread. And it might be interesting to know that CBD can help block this, so possibly slowing cancers. So we've got the chemicals, the endocannabinoids, we've got receptors for them. Well, we've got a neural transmission now to deal with. We've got neuron to neuron transfer, and you're probably familiar with a real simple neuron to neuron transfer. The first neuron fires and it affects the second neuron in the line. Well, the endocannabinoid system has a unique retrograde system, so when that first neuron fires, the second one turns around and says, oh, I don't know, let's see what we're going to do about this. And they produce the endocannabinoids in that postsynaptic neuron where they're needed, when they're needed, and then they disappear pretty fast. But it leads to homeostasis in every system of your body. The best description I have of how it might help in epilepsy is, so that first neuron, the problem with epilepsy is there's a lot of sporadic firing and over excitation of the neurons. And so that first neuron fires, and the second one turns around and says, oh, no, I'm going to buffer you out with some endocannabinoids, and might be slowing down the seizure. So I have another question for you. So who can be the first to name the system of the body that might cause the runner's high? And the prize is the Cannabis Cookbook. Who can name that system? Well, yes, Bill. It is the endocannabinoid system. All right, you win the book. It's a very cool book. Okay, so we made it to number 2. I'd like to explain why this is important for healthcare providers and for patients to learn about the endocannabinoid system. So again, looking back on the Department of Health's numbers, we've got over 33,000 patients, we've got 208 providers to help them. So physicians and nurses are generally lacking in knowledge about medical cannabis, or cannabis in general. They don't know about the beneficial effects, they don't know about the adverse effects. And some studies have shown that, well, education resulted in a more willingness to even discuss this with their patients and counsel them about it. And I think healthcare providers should know that there are many patients who won't disclose their use of cannabis because they're afraid of being judged. And this can be dangerous, especially if the patient is taking medications that might have drug-drug interactions with it, or if they're having surgery. So last year, the Department of Health conducted a survey, and they asked medical cannabis patients in Hawaii's program who they relied on for medical guidance. 56% of the respondents said that they rely on dispensary workers. We gotta fix this. And then the other reason, a huge reason actually, is because the National Council on State Boards of Nursing say so. They say it's important for nurses to have 6 essential knowledge areas. They say that the nurse should have a working knowledge of the current laws. That's both federal and state legalization of medical and recreational use. So they need to learn about Hawaii's medical cannabis program laws. They also need to have at least a general understanding of the endocannabinoid system, the receptors, the cannabinoids, and the interactions between them. They need to have an understanding of cannabis pharmacology and safety, and I can help teach all of these things. And they also need to look at the research that's associated with the medical use of cannabis. That's a little bit harder to teach because last year there were 42,000 studies, I believe. To date, we've got a collection of 42,000 studies. So I can help nurses learn about Hawaii's medical cannabis laws. I helped create and edit this book, mostly edit it. It was created by the Drug Policy Forum. And it's also posted on the website of this event. So The only way to get a copy is to either send me an email requesting it or look on this website. You can also go to the Department of Health's website, and they have a lot of information about the laws, the rules, and the regs. So that's why it's important for healthcare professionals to know. So why is it important also for patients to learn this? Well, keeping your endocannabinoid system healthy is the key to optimal health. And remember, there are some disease processes that may be caused by an endocannabinoid deficiency. We do have some evidence for it in fibromyalgia, migraines, and inflammatory bowel syndrome. And these deficiencies might be addressed using just endocannabinoid enhancing diets and activities or cannabis. So patients who are aware can make healthier lifestyle decisions, the ones that keep the endocannabinoid system healthy. I'm not going to go through everything on this slide, but just so you know, you can enhance your endocannabinoid system through diet. Because they're synthesized from omega-3 and 6 fatty acids in the right ratio, you can get some protective effects at different ratios. Hemp seed just so happens, which is another form of cannabis, happens to have one of the perfect ratios for that. And probiotics may help. And also, CBD helps keep anandamide in your system longer. You might also be interested to know that you can enhance your endocannabinoid system through exercise, music, maybe singing, and sleep. You might also be able to do so with acupuncture, with yoga, social contact, and also osteopathic body work. An old study showed an increase in anandamide levels by 168%. So my last intention is to help guide you to some of the best resources. And I especially want healthcare providers to look at obtaining some continuing education hours to renew their professional licenses. So I'm hoping that you will help take some information to them and encourage them to do that. So I stocked my booth with some of my favorite books, and I've got lots of handouts for you about medical education programs where they offer continuing education credits. So I have memberships in these 3 groups, and you already heard about the American Cannabis Nurses Association. Well, I'm also a member of the Cannabis Nurses Network and the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. And all of these groups offer some free information. They also offer continuing education courses and access to pretty vast libraries. All of them host medical cannabis webinars and conferences with some of the top researchers, scientists, and clinicians. And all of these offer discounts with membership. So I've been working with the American Cannabis Nurses Association for 8 years. I'm on the education committee, and I created one CEU course called Cannabis and Cancer in 2021. And I'm also doing some peer review for their conferences. And we are working on getting recognized as a specialty in nursing. So cannabis nurses as a specialty. And we're working on shaping our scope of practice right now. With the Cannabis Nurses Network, I'm a member of the Advocacy and Political Action Committee. And I'm Hawaii's team leader for a bill that's in motion right now. In fact, the hearing is probably still going on as we speak. It will allow terminally ill patients access to their medicine, non-smoke medicines in healthcare settings. So those are the 2 bill numbers. I have information about at my booth also, and I'll also be giving a talk tomorrow about that. So upcoming conferences, we've got the ACNA conference. I'll be going to that in Denver, the Mile High City, and really looking forward to that. The Cannabis Nurses Network doesn't have a conference scheduled, but they have a lot of really good medical cannabis education programs specifically for nurses. And they also offer a 1 credit for Ryan's Law, which is that law that I just talked about for terminally ill patients. It was passed in California last year as Ryan's Law. We don't know it as that in Hawaii, but that's what it is. And the Cannabis Nurses Network helped lead the charge on getting it passed in California. And they have a Ryan's Law Action Center. They've got guidelines for the facilities to help bring this to life. So the last one is the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, well, that I'm a member of. And they're offering a lot of continuing education courses, and this is their newest one. It's just targeting pharmacy curriculum. And they also offer some free events. The next one's coming up February 17th, and this is from the UCSD, so San Diego's research. They have cannabis research program there, and so that's one of the cannabis researchers is going to be talking about the work they're doing there. So Society of Cannabis Clinicians is also part of a big conference that's coming up. They're doing a medical practicum workshop, and on the far left, we've got Dr. Bonnie Goldstein. She's one of world famous cannabis clinicians. She has a clinic in California that specializes in pediatric cancers, autism, and epilepsy. She's successfully treated many patients. And on the far right, we've got Dr. Dustin Sulak, who runs a medical cannabis clinic in Maine and has treated over 20,000 patients. And I've learned so much from this guy. He provides free webinars every month, and he just goes over the science. He brings forth, he just does reviews of studies and shows you the flaws in this science and the strength of the science. And sometimes his meetings go on for 2 or 3 hours, but he's offering it for free, and it's really informative. So they're all part of the CanMed conference, and CanMed has been offering some of the best conferences that I've gone to. This one is coming up in May. And then there's also a podcast online that's pretty informative too. So then the answer page has been a leader in teaching, especially in the state of New York. In the state of New York, they require their doctors to have CEUs in medical cannabis. And so the answer page was chosen as the provider of those programs for the doctors. And they have programs not only for doctors and nurses, but they have them for pharmacists, for psychiatrists, psychologists, and dentists. And this is one of them that I have an affiliation with. So I will profit if someone buys their courses. But you can see they're representing New York, and they've got them for, I think, 3 or 4 other states. And this is a nationally approved course. They also have some that are talking about incorporating this, the use of CBD into clinical care. And they have an answer of the day. You can subscribe to it, and each day they'll tell you a little. They have an answer for some question about some science. The next one on my list that I do have an affiliation with is Holistic Caring and the Lumar Clinic. They offer certification programs, but not CEUs. And I'm enrolled in one of their programs now, and that first one, the Cannabis Health Coach Certification Program. They also, they offer consultations by phone, and the first 5 minutes is free to assess your needs, and then they offer different packages for nurse consultations. One of the nurses wrote this book, and I'm just getting to know it, and it's a pretty good book. They cover the endocannabinoid system, they talk about dosing challenges, and provide some dosing strategies and how to help coach somebody who is trying to use cannabis as medicine. They do also offer a line of products. These are largely CBD and other cannabinoids mixed with some herbal formulas. And that we also have one that's about to launch soon. This one is similar to Patients Out of Time, and it's called ACE. It's Academy of Cannabis Education. And so that's it for the programs. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about some of the books that I have at the table. These are my top 3 picks. Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, who I told you about at the clinic in California. And on the far right, Dr. Dustin Sulak. He created a guidebook for clinicians. And then in the middle, Dr. Carrie Clark. She created this. This is one of my favorite books. It's a handbook for nurses, and it covers pretty much everything I could ever want to know. So these books are provided by Cannabis Libris, and these are books for the cannabis conscious. There's another program of note that I would like to call your attention to, and you do need to pay for it. It's an app. It's called Canna Keys, and you can do searches of cannabis research using the app, and you just plug in all kinds of filters, exactly what you want to search for. Cannabinoids, terpenes, you can search for endocannabinoids, the endocannabidiol. A lot of things are included in this. Another free source is from the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine. And this came out in 2017, but it's still a really good resource. And they did a review of over 10,000 cannabis studies to look at the safety and effectiveness. And it's a 400-page document, but it's online, it's free, and it's a really good resource. The other one that's free that I've relied on is Project CBD, and you can go to their website and search for whatever you like to look at. Also, I have a special guest working my booth today. Her name is Amy Nielsen, and she's a cannabis researcher. She's also an herbalist and a nutritionist, and you can come talk to her today. And she is collecting patient case reports from medical professionals. And if you know of any that you can share with her, please talk to her about that. So I'd like to just review about what I covered today. So I taught you a little bit about the endocannabinoid system and the pieces and parts of that, how it works, and explain why, at least I think, this is important for healthcare professionals and patients to learn more. And then some of the resources. I hope that you'll come to my booth, check out the books, check out some of the programs, and of course, ask your doctor and nurse if medical cannabis education is right for them. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Yes.
What is the best way to consume cannabis? Like smoking, tea, tinctures, edibles, or is it various one individual? Which one has the least side effects?
The question is, what is the best form of medical cannabis to use? And that's a complex question because Different combinations work best for different people, for different health problems. It's very individualized medicine, and sometimes patients have to try lots of different things to find the right combination that works for them. It depends on what area of the body that you're targeting. For example, if you were trying to target something like a cervical cancer or rectal cancer, then you might use a suppository. It's generally thought that smoking, vaporization of the bud of the dried flower is probably a little healthier than smoking a joint. That being said, if the patient is having severe nausea and can't take anything orally, smoking, if that's what you got in the emergency, you need immediate relief from nausea, then smoking might be okay. But we prefer to have patients use a vaporization of the bud, not the vape cartridges with the oil in it. We're not really sure what the long-term effects of vaping oil into your lungs is. You get some with a joint, but anyway, so it really depends on what you're trying to treat, who it is, I think, most of the patients in medical cannabis programs, I think in every state, the main reason people use it is for pain management. And I think many patients find that a combination of edibles, some sort of oral ingestion, for sort of like the long-term medicine to keep in your system, and then use vaping or smoking as the quick relief for the breakthrough pain. Does that answer your question enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just, I guess, wondering if smoking was bad, if that's because of the lungs versus.
Yeah, smoking can be harsh. It can lead to, some problems. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, especially if you're a heavy smoker. You might want to try to find some sort of oral solution to, So, okay, I do actually have one last prize. So who can guess the lethal dose of cannabis? How many pounds would you have to smoke in 15 minutes to die? And the prize is a book, Healing with CBD. Okay, how many pounds? In 15 minutes. Huh? So this is a pound. No, actually, they strapped gas on monkeys and they pumped in enough smoke to kill them. So they did come up with a number.
That wasn't the pot killing, that was a lack of oxygen.
Right.
Yeah, they essentially asphyxiated them, but that was their number. So, I mean, you can see on here, as far as like on the toxicity scale, you have to have 20,000 times the therapeutic dose to have a lethal effect. Okay, who wants to guess how many pounds? And it's in the thousands.
5,000.
More.
10,000. 8.
Less than 20. More than 8.
12.
A little more than 12.
13.
Yeah, 13,000.
Was he with the bag?
No, you win a book. You win a book. Oh, no, not 13,000. I'm sorry, it's 1,300. 1,300 pounds. I'm not a liar. I just forgot. Okay. Okay, so now I'm really done. So thank you again. Please do come to booth 13 and check out what I got.